and MS in Public Policy from Carnegie Mellon University. He studied technology policy from Massachusetts Institute of Technology and is founding member of the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. He was elected to Rajya Sabha from Karnataka and worked as Minister for State for Commerce, Power and Environment. He is currently Minister for Rural Development and holds additional charge of drinking water and sanitation. Ladies and gentlemen, Shri Jairam Ramesh for the inaugural governance lecture, Saranga and the Audacity of Law. Shri Jairam Ramesh.
Thank you, Mr. B.V. Rao, Mr. Ajay Singh, ladies and gentlemen. I've been told to speak for about half an hour, 20 minutes, and then we'll have a question and answer discussion on the subject of the presentation. First of all, I disclaim any ownership to the title of the lecture. The Audacity of Hope was Mr. Rao's idea, but I thought it was a catchy title. And that explains why it's up on the screen right here. First of all, let me say how intrigued and how surprised I am that somebody is actually taking interest in the Saranda development plan. That the national media is actually taking the trouble, the time, spending the money to post a young man on the spot who is actually reporting virtually from the ground, so to speak. And he's based in Manoharpur, not an easy place to work in under any circumstances, much less an easy place to live in. And I want to first recognize Sarthak's great contributions. He's been critical of us, and I welcome that criticism. And I must say that much of his criticism has prompted us to carry out changes in the way some of these programs are being implemented. And I welcome more such people, young men, who are actually giving us honest assessment and feedback on the implementation of development programs. Much of the information may not be palatable for us, but I think it's important to hear what is actually happening on the ground. As was explained by Mr. Rao and as you saw in the film, this initiative goes back to almost 10 months in 2011. In August of 2011, in July, August of 2011, the Saranda area, which is about 950 square kilometers, the Saranda forest area of Paschimi Singhbhum district of Jharkhand, was liberated after 11 years of control by Maoists. And last August 15th, 2011 was the first time the national tricolor flew somewhere in the Saranda area after an 11-year gap. It was a hard-fought operation. The CRPF deserves all credit. This is not an easy area to operate in, even from a security point of view, because it is one of the most serious malaria endemic areas of our country. The CRPF, I think, had a lot of morbidity casualties on account of malaria, but they went in when they were least expected. I think this is one very interesting change in the strategy of the CRPF, which normally intervenes when they were expected to intervene, but for the first time they actually went in at the height of the monsoon. And nobody expected, least of all the Maoists, who probably have a better view of us than we ourselves. They thought that during the monsoon, nobody is going to risk his health and life to get into the Saranda area. But it is precisely during the monsoon that the DG CRPF, Mr. Vijay Kumar, decided to move in, and I think over a 2.5 or a 3 month period, with the help of the Jharkhand police, they were able to establish a presence. They don't dominate as yet by any circumstance, but they have important and expanding physical presence. So it was after this achievement that I asked myself the question, how can development consolidate on the security success? Clearly, this was a success for security forces, but the challenge was, how do you sustain this success? How do you ensure that it does not go back into the Maoist control? And how do you ensure that the fact that it has come back into civilian hands, we would use this opportunity creatively from a developmental point of view? And it is then that we started our dialogue with the Jharkhand government, with local governments, with the CRPF, and we came up with what is now called the Saranda Development Plan. The Saranda Development Plan spreads over an area of about 950 square kilometers. It covers 6 gram panchayats. It covers 1 block of Paschimi Singhbhum district, and it covers a population of about 35,000, about 7,000 families, all of whom are impoverished, all of whom would be, in my view, below a BPL. I mean, if that is possible. They are below a BPL, they are most impoverished, they are most disadvantaged, they are 99.99% tribal, and they are also living, in my view, which is a very sad reflection on all of us, they are living in conditions which should, after so many years of independence, should be considered intolerable and unacceptable by any standards. So this was the background to the Saranda Development Plan, and the idea was, as I said, to consolidate on the success of the security forces and see how the implementation of development programs can help in transforming the environment and ensuring that the Maoists don't return. Now, there are a number of areas in our country which are liberated. You don't feel, when you're living in Delhi, that there are regions of our country that are liberated from civilian control, but they are. There's a 4,000 square kilometer area right in the center of our country in Chhattisgarh, spreading across Narayanpur, Bijaypur, Dantewada, the entire Abuj Mahad area, which is liberated, where I can't go, the BDO can't go, the Mukhya can't go, the Sarpanch representatives can't go, the collector certainly can't go. Last time a collector tried to go, you saw what happened to young Alex Menon. So there is this 4,000 square kilometer Abuj Mahad area in Chhattisgarh which is liberated from the control of the state government, liberated from the control of the central government. There were parts of Andhra Pradesh, the Nagarjuna Sagar Sri Sailam Tiger Reserve, that's about 4,000 square kilometers, that had been liberated, but that's now slowly also coming back into civilian control. There are parts, yesterday I was in Lohardaga, only about 140 kilometers from Ranchi, and there were parts of Lohardaga district which are liberated, where we can't go. In fact, it's ironic that I wanted to visit, in fact, day before yesterday, I wanted to visit the birthplace of Birsa Munda, the great tribal leader, and I couldn't go to the birthplace of Birsa Munda because that's now beyond the pale of civilian control. So Saranda is not unique. The point I want to make is Saranda is not unique. There are these pockets of Orissa, pockets of Chhattisgarh, pockets of Jharkhand, pockets of Andhra, pockets of Maharashtra, Gadchiroli district particularly, where you have regions where the civilian administration is simply not present, where the district administration cannot go, where elected representatives cannot go, and where really the writ of the state, defined largely, defined broadly, does not run. So the relevance of Saranda development plan goes beyond the 900 square kilometers. It's not just restricted to Saranda, which, as was explained, is the best sal forest in the world, some of the thickest sal forest in the world, the richest iron ore deposits, and who knows, there may well be other minerals if a proper mineral survey were to be done. So 10 months ago we started this exercise, and broadly speaking, the Saranda development plan, the components of the Saranda development plan are the normal rural development programs that we run, of which the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act is certainly the most important. Today, labor is actually coming out and working on Mahatma Gandhi Narega and getting paid. Wages are being paid to them. The Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, under which rural roads are being built to improve connectivity. The Indira Awas Yojana, which provides assistance of about 48,000 rupees to each of the 7,000 households in need of a house who are below the poverty line. The rural livelihood interventions in order to add value to the traditional livelihoods, forest-based livelihoods of the tribal populations, and improving the basic infrastructure, particularly electricity, education, health, and so on and so forth. So as was explained earlier, the Saranda development plan is a concentrated, highly focused developmental intervention with timelines, with intensive monitoring. I personally have visited Saranda 4 times in 6 months, and we are trying to demonstrate what development can mean for communities who have not seen development in the last 60 years. I mean, that's the base on which we are starting is very, very, very low. And therefore, what we are doing in Saranda development plan is basically ensuring the fulfillment of constitutional obligations to each and every citizen of our country. For some reason or the other, they had been denied these benefits, and we can discuss it during the question answer time, why Saranda was poor in 1990 or thereabouts, when the first Maoist activities began to start. And let me also admit that had it not been for the Maoists, the Saranda area would not have occupied the radar screen or occupied center stage in policy discussions. So in a very perverse way, what the Maoists have done is to bring to our attention, to bring to our consciousness the fact that there are large parts of our country, particularly in tribal India, tribal pockets of our country, in the central Indian tribal belt particularly, where basic development is conspicuous by its absence. It's a sad commentary on all of us, on successive central governments, on successive state governments, and I think it's a failure, it's a colossal failure of the political establishment to ensure basic dignity of living to these tribal communities that created the conditions which allowed the Maoists to come in and establish a presence and continue with their activities. Now, rather than get into a discussion on the numbers as to what we promised and what we achieved, I leave that for critics like Sarthak to explain to you. I want to raise some of the larger developmental issues that come out of the Saranda development plan, which are relevant not just for Saranda, but are also relevant for other areas where this problem of Maoist liberation is a phenomenon. The first and most important issue, in my view, is the mining issue. The areas which are liberated are areas that are also mineral rich. And it is also a fact that we should not, as I have said earlier, we should not romanticize the Maoists in our country. They are romanticized in civil society, they are romanticized in the media, but increasingly the Maoist movement is not an ideology-driven movement, it's a levy-driven movement. You know what a levy is? It's a local, in fact in Lohardaga and Gumla, yesterday and day before yesterday, ordinary tribals were explaining to me, they knew what a levy-based system was. A levy-based system is that for every ton of iron ore that you remove, or for every ton of bauxite that you remove, or for every ton of coal that you remove, a certain proportion goes to the Maoists. So increasingly the Maoist movement is a levy-based movement. It's not an ideology-driven movement. However, a lot of these things get subsumed under the rubric of Maoist movement. And the fact is that in all these areas, and Saranda being a prime example, the question of mining and how we adopt a mining strategy that is ecologically sustainable and socially beneficial assumes crucial significance. In Saranda itself, a large number of private players have been given mining licenses. Of course, the biggest player in Saranda is the public sector company, the Steel Authority of India, to whom the iron ore mines came as a result of sales, acquisition or takeover of ISCO, the erstwhile Indian Iron and Steel Company. But we have a real issue here. And in fact, one of the strongest criticisms of the Saranda development plan that I hear every day, which I heard in Jharkhand yesterday and day before yesterday, from human rights groups, from civil society organizations, from media, that what the Saranda development plan is, its objective is to create an environment conducive to mining activities. That the roads we are building will open up mines, the houses we are building will help create an environment that will enable mining operations to take place, and so on and so forth. And one of the biggest challenges, in fact the biggest challenge that I've had to face in the last 10 months or so, is to convince people that this is not a mining oriented development plan. It's a basic infrastructure and dignity oriented development plan. And that the issue of mining is a separate issue that has to be tackled by both the state and the central government. But I want to suggest to you that in all these areas, whether it is in Abuj Mahad in Chhattisgarh, or whether it is Saranda in Jharkhand, or whether it is in the Koraput, Malkangiri, Raigada area in Odisha, the issue of mining is of paramount significance. And the fear is that if you allow mining to take place the way it has taken place in our country, not only would it be environmentally devastating, but it would also ensure an influx of outsiders, with all the menial jobs being done by the locals. In fact, this is the fear that has been expressed to me time and again. That yesterday I visited a bauxite mine of a leading private company, which is in a Naxal affected area of Lohardaga. And the complaint of the local tribals was that all the menial jobs have gone to the locals and all the semi-skilled and skilled jobs have gone to outsiders. Our track record on mining has been pathetic. We have not demonstrated environmental responsibility or social responsibility in mining. And the commitments that we have made while acquiring land, the R&R commitments that we have made, we have not yet fulfilled completely. One of the strongest propaganda issues for the Maoists in Chhattisgarh is the propaganda that the R&R promised when land was acquired for the Bailadila iron ore mines by the NMDC have yet to be fulfilled. And I myself have seen a large multi-purpose irrigation project in Chhattisgarh inaugurated way back in 1972 when tribals were displaced. These tribals got displaced a second time. So multiple displacements is not an uncommon phenomenon. So I think the mining, our track record being what it is, our inability to fulfill our R&R promises and pledges, our propensity to acquire huge amounts of land far in excess of what we require, of which the HEC in Ranchi is the prime example. 5,000 acres were acquired and only a few hundreds of them are being utilized. Our propensity to acquire the land and sit on the land without doing anything on it. In fact, today there is an agitation in Jharkhand, in Nagari, which is hardly 20 minutes drive from Ranchi, because 200 acres or 300 acres of land was acquired 55 years ago. And today, the government wants to establish an Indian Institute of Management in that land. They want to establish the Central University there. And local tribals are saying, what were you doing for 55 years? Of course, not only local tribals, but also newly discovered tribals like Mr. Sangma, have also gone there. And there's a big agitation in Nagari. The propensity to acquire large tracts of land, much in excess of what we need, the propensity to acquire land and not do anything with that land, and of course, our continued inability to fulfill our R&R pledges has led to a situation where the credibility of any government assurance to a tribal is at a rock bottom. Walter Fernandez, a very eminent scholar who is now in Guwahati, who has worked, perhaps the one scholar who has worked the maximum on land displacement, has estimated that something like 15 million tribals in central India have been subject to some form of displacement or the other over the last 50, 60 years. Now, we may argue on the precise numbers, but I think the magnitude of what Walter Fernandez has talked about is very significant. And I would place the mining issue at the crux of the development debate today in areas like Saranda. The second larger developmental issue relates to forest administration. These are all not just mineral-rich areas, but they are also forest-rich areas. We brought about a historic legislation in 2006, the Forest Rights Act. And the Forest Rights Act was opposed by foresters. And I spent the good part of 26 months in the Ministry of Environment and Forests battling with the forest bureaucracy on the Forest Rights Act 2006. It's now the law of the land. It has been implemented. It is being implemented. But there are serious lacunae in its implementation. Community forest rights have not been recognized to the extent that they should have. 11 lakh individual pattas have been recognized, individual rights have been recognized, but hardly 2,000 or 3,000 community forest rights have been recognized and granted. And you know that the essence of society in tribal areas is community. So we are not yet in the mode of recognizing community forest rights to the extent that they should have, realizing the ground level realities in these tribal areas. And to make the Forest Rights Act, the pattas given under the Forest Rights Act, a starting point of a new partnership between the tribals and the forest administration has yet to take place. According to